Welcome back to The Explainer. So, usually we're totally geeking out over the massive rockets, the fuel loads, and the incredibly complex hardware it takes to get to the Red Planet. But today, well, today we are pivoting hard. We're moving from the hardware of rockets to the software of human survival on Mars. Because honestly, getting there is really just step one.
Think about it. How do you organize a Mars colony without immediately plunging right into utter chaos? I mean, when you finally buy that ticket to Mars, the absolute most critical challenge isn't just arriving safely, it's figuring out how to prevent lethal disorganization once you're actually boots on the ground. Space is totally unforgiving, right? And chaos out there? That's a quick ticket to disaster. We absolutely need a system.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our mission briefing for today. We'll be covering organizing the mission, introducing the fleet, why a quasi-military structure is needed, the 4 core regiments, and securing Mars, and the money. All right, Section 1, organizing the Mars mission. So, to manage this absolute mammoth of a task, the blueprint we're looking at proposes a centralized hub, and it's called the fleet. Basically, it's a quasi-military organization created specifically to manage the technical aspects, run the space training, and establish the command of those initial Mars settlements. It's essentially designed to be the ultimate administrative solution to the downright mind-boggling complexities of a mission to Mars. Now, think about the number 28 for a second. That isn't just some random figure pulled out of a hat. Imagine having to give up 28 consecutive days of your year, every single year, just to maintain your place in society. Crazy, right? Well, that is the mandatory obligation to the fleet. If you are a resident of the Earth Embassy gearing up for this journey, you literally owe this specific block of time annually. It's how they ensure the mission has the continuous, organized manpower it absolutely needs to succeed. Moving right along to Section 2, introducing the fleet and its operational philosophy.
Now, when you picture this, think of it less like a massive standing army and more like a highly specialized reserve force. The fleet isn't going to have everyone on active duty 24/7. Instead, it maintains a pretty small full-time staff, but brings people in for extended duty periods for really specialized needs. Like pilot training or medical prep. In a lot of ways, it operates a whole lot like a reserve component of the US military, while also actively borrowing concepts from international militaries, specifically looking at models from nations like Israel, Britain, and Finland.
Naturally, an operation this big means the fleet is going to be managing some seriously massive infrastructure. We're talking about running the main hospital, a full-blown military academy, and housing a science and research center. And let me tell you, this science and research center, it's absolutely vital. It is literally the bridge between Earth and Mars. It's going to be the primary focal point for gathering all the science and engineering info you'd ever need to transfer people, equipment, and whole businesses from the Earth Embassy all the way across the solar system.
That brings us to Section 3, why a quasi-military structure. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why the blueprint argues for such a rigid setup. It boils down to 3 core reasons. First, you have to centralize the training, organization, and execution of space ops. Second, you need a single entity to serve as the ultimate engineering decision maker. And third, you absolutely must provide a clear chain of command. You need dedicated commanders to guide those space operations and lead those highly sensitive early efforts on Mars.
So, how exactly does the fleet handle the actual hardware side of things? Well, they act as a centralized planner. Think of it kind of like NASA or the US Air Force. They are likely never going to actually build this spacecraft themselves. Nope. Instead, they'll let out contracts to highly competitive private aerospace businesses that can offer the best designs and the most cost-effective ideas. This dynamic lets the mission design and build out hardware way more cheaply and efficiently. But beyond just building the shiny rockets, there's the human element to consider. The source material hits the nail on the head here. It says you need a clear command instead of 6 different bosses and the usual number of kibitzers. It's kind of funny, but the reality is deadly serious. When you are millions of miles away from Earth, relying on a chaotic committee to make split-second decisions, yeah, that will get you killed. Having one clear, unbroken chain of command to enforce discipline is absolutely crucial for survival.
Let's turn the page to Section 4, the 4 core regiments. Basically, the entire backbone of the fleet is split up into 4 core regiments. We have engineers handling design, space handling operations, Marines acting as the muscle, and military police providing security. Let's break these down one by one really quickly to see how they all mesh together in this giant puzzle.
First up, the engineers. Now, these folks aren't just sitting around drafting blueprints for Martian domes. Their work actually starts right here on Earth. The units within this regiment are going to be incredibly varied. They're tasked with designing all the critical infrastructure for the colony, planning out the mission spaceport, and figuring out the various spacecraft we'll need. But get this. Certain units will also be in charge of physically building out the Earth Embassy itself, literally laying the groundwork before anyone even thinks about leaving the atmosphere.
Next in line is the Space Regiment. Now, this group concentrates strictly on the massive and, honestly, inherently dangerous logistical challenge of physical space operations. They are directly responsible for the rigorous pilot training and conducting every single launch required to safely shoot humans and massive explosive rockets into the totally unforgiving vacuum of space. No pressure, right?
Then we have the Marine Regiment. Composed primarily of young, physically fit folks, their gritty reality involves providing crucial manual labor and raw muscle power back on Earth when heavy construction equipment is lacking. And what about on Mars? Well, they'll be out there doing long-distance surveying and exploration completely on foot. Motorized vehicles just won't be an initial priority when the colony first touches down, meaning this regiment is going to face sheer physical exhaustion to map out humanity's brand new home.
Finally, we arrive at Section 5, Securing Mars and Money.
Which brings us right to the Military Police Regiment. Look, in any society, you need rules, and a Mars colony is certainly no exception. This regiment is entirely responsible for public safety, general security, and strictly enforcing the new rules and laws of Mars. It's all about maintaining discipline and making absolutely sure the entire colony doesn't just collapse from the inside out.
But, it's not just physical security we have to worry about. It's financial security, too. The logistics of planetary economics are surprisingly wild. Just think about the sheer absurdity of it for a second. The fleet is going to need to collect hard, physical Earth currency, specifically US dollars and euros, from its residents. Then they have to seamlessly substitute that with a local Martian currency and e-payments, all while safeguarding these massive, highly complex financial sums across two completely different planets.
Now, what's really interesting about this is that to manage all that money, the military police requires a specialized detective unit to act as a strict auditing task force. Why? Well, because human nature travels right along with us into space. This unit is totally necessary to keep honest people honest, make sure any financial shenanigans are kept to an absolute bare minimum, and ensure that the dishonest ones are dealt with appropriately.
Bringing this whole narrative full circle, the source material notes that a spirit of all for one and one for all absolutely has to prevail if this mission is going to succeed. The fleet isn't just some rigid military structure created so people can boss each other around. It's fundamentally designed to systematize a much-needed willingness to just pitch in, to serve those 28 days a year without complaining, and to collectively build the mission's entire infrastructure from scratch.
So, I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought. Is a quasi-military structure really the only way humanity can survive the final frontier? Is a strict, regimented bureaucracy just the unavoidable price of surviving the extreme dangers of Mars? It's a fascinating blueprint, and it really makes you rethink human nature and the true boundaries of space exploration. I highly encourage you to dive deeper into this topic and really consider what it takes to build a society from nothing. Until next time, keep learning, stay focused, and stay curious.